Hey folks, welcome back to Hobbyshire, where miniatures get painted, oftentimes badly, tea gets made, and occasionally I vanish into the wilderness for a bit. Today I'm sharing how I painted these three totally normal and definitely not summoning a demon cultists for a diorama that I'm planning to make at some point in the future. It's going to involve a ritual sacrifice because why not bring a little wholesome chaos to your hobby desk? Now you might have noticed I haven't uploaded in a while. That's partly because I went on a camping trip to Snowdonia in Wales. Absolutely stunning place. I camped by a lake, chased waterfalls, and did my best not to get headbutted by an overly judgmental sheep. It was all part of my clumsy and failing attempt to train for climbing Ben Nevis again. I gave it a go before, and let's just say the mountain absolutely humbled me. This time I'm sort of training, mostly by walking uphill whilst dramatically wheezing and pretending it's fine. Honestly though, camping is one of my favourite things. There's nothing like escaping the concrete jungle and replacing it with cold sausages, damp socks, and arguing with your tent in the rain whilst trying not to cry because the wind is scaring them may or may not be an angry badger outside trying to get in and steal your hobnobs. If you'd like to see more of those adventures, drop a comment below. I've got another trip next month and I might make a video out of it. The other reason I've been quiet? Well, I don't do this full time. Shocking, I know. YouTube sadly doesn't pay in paint pots and biscuits, so I've got to do regular human things like go to work and spend time with people who don't understand why I own tiny skeletons. But despite all that, I managed to get these awesome 3D printed miniatures finished. And I think they turn out pretty cool, bad paint jobs and all, so let's make a cup of tea and get started right after this brutally honest disclaimer that may or may not include mild despair and pitiful excuses. What you are about to witness are some seriously amateur painting skills. I'm not a master painter, I don't claim to be, and if you're here looking for pro-level techniques, smooth blends and expert tips, this ain't that kind of show and you're going to need to look elsewhere. This is just me clumsily loving my hobby and doing my absolute best with a brush, a dream, and very questionable hand-eye coordination. Painting miniatures is hands down my weakest modelling skill, and this video isn't a tutorial, it's just me sharing my journey with you as I enjoy the crafty goodness. So please, no snarky remarks, no constructive critiques that are really just veiled roasts. Yes, I've been roasted before over my poor painting skills, hence this cheerful little statement. Let's just chill, enjoy the ride, and maybe laugh with me. Not at me, please. I'm sharing this journey because hobbies are meant to be fun, even if you're kinda terrible at them. And hey, let's remember the golden rule of the internet, and life. If you can't say something nice, maybe just keep scrolling. Alrighty, let's go! The first thing I did with these little beauties was hit them with a black spray primer. You've got to give them that dramatic shadowy look before they become fully unhinged cultists. Plus it means if I miss anything, like say when I'm painting over one of the wrinkly bits and I don't get the paint in the crook and cranny, rather than it standing out with grey or white, the black will act as its own kind of shadow, so it helps cover up my mistakes a bit better. In case you're wondering where I got them from, these are from a lovely little Etsy shop called Future Forge Online. It's a small family-run business, and honestly, I get most of my minis from there because they're just that good. The detail is mwah, chef's kiss. I'm not sponsored or anything, but I did manage to snag a discount code for you lovely people, so check the description for that and go treat yourself, because you deserve cultists. Once they were primed, I decided to name them because obviously that's the logical next step. You'll notice in the video that I've called them Maximus, Decimus, Meridius. Brownie points if you can guess the reference there. Clue? It's a film that involves a lot of shouting, swords and sand. Absolute classic. I like naming my minis because imagining little backstories for them helps me decide on a paint scheme and character vibe. For this trio, I figured they're all in the same cult, but each wears a different coloured robe to show their rank or role, because even dark rituals need a bit of organisation. So I started with this one and gave him a robe in Rakar flesh, which I actually regretted later and repainted entirely, but I left this bit in the video anyway so that you can see my process, and also my tendency to make bold statements and then change my mind like 5 minutes later. It's all part of the fun. The next one got base coated in gung-ho green, a lovely shade from the Duncan Rhodes 2 Thin Coats range. And finally this one here is rocking Zerius purple, or Zerus. Look, I don't know how to pronounce half these names, I just put it on the brush and hope for the best. I always thin my paints down and apply multiple light coats. It helps keep the finish smooth and it avoids any tragic, chunky texture disasters. And here's how they look after that step. Honestly, even though I end up changing Maximus's robe later on, I still think they're looking pretty cool at this stage. If you're painting along, don't stress about sticking to the same colours as me. Get creative, mess around, change your mind. It's your cult now. Next, I went back to Maximus and started adding some shadows with Morghast bone. I didn't want the robe to look like a flat bed sheet, and some early shade in here helps build up depth later on. Pro tip, pick a colour that's just a bit stronger or warmer than your base. It doesn't have to necessarily be darker, just something with a bit more punch. Then I slapped on a wash called Battle Mud, which is basically the grimdark cousin of Agrac's Earthshade. It's like Agrax went out for a smoke and came back meaner. Don't quote me on that though, I'm mostly just winging it with false confidence. For highlights, I brought in pallid witch flesh and focused on the upper edges only, avoiding the recesses like they're spoilers for a show that I haven't finished yet. Now Maximus is holding a knife, so naturally I got the bright idea to add some bloodstains to his robe, without actually knowing how to paint bloodstains. Bold move, yes, and I think that's the moment I subconsciously decided to repaint him later. If you can paint bloodstains better than a toddler with ketchup, go for it. It'll probably look amazing in your hands, but in mine, it just looks terrible. Moving on to Decimus, I stayed with gung-ho green and added a medium brown and brought in green beret too. I thinned the paints right down and attempted a wet blend to get all the shadows, highlights and weathering done in one go. It went experimental, but weirdly, I kinda like how it turned out. Sometimes chaos does deliver. For Meridius, the cult leader, I got fancy and combined both of them previous techniques. I wet layered Screamer pink onto his robe and then blended it back with watered down Zerius purple. It gave this rich two-tone look that made him feel more regal and slightly unhinged. Exactly the vibe I was going for, to be fair. I picked those colours from Meridius because they reminded me of Roman Praetorians and other ancient authority figures, except more into summoning forbidden horrors than they are defending the Senate. And here's how they're looking now. Honestly, I think they're shaping up nicely, except Maximus. Sorry mate, you still suck. I attempted to fix Maximus by dry brushing Screaming Skull all over his robe. It went about as well as you'd expect. Epic fail, but hey, onwards we go. I tried to dull it down with a combo of Null Oil and Agrac's Earthshade. Did it help? No. Did I pretend it didn't keep going anyway? Absolutely. While I was emotionally recovering from Maximus, I turned my attention to Decimus. I mixed up a little cocktail of Agrac's Earthshade, Aphonian Camo Shade, and Null Oil and gave his robe a full wash in that. Then I gently placed him aside like a soggy solid and let him dry. Meridius, who at this point had earned the title of favourite child, he got a straight up Null Oil wash over his robes. Simple, classy and effective. Back to Maximus, I gave the robe edges a dry brush of Rakarth flesh, and weirdly, it didn't look awful. Kinda dirty, tattered, a little end of the world chick. I could have left it at that if I wanted to, but my subconscious had already packed his bags and decided that we were repainting anyway, so the damage was done at this point. Decimus got his edges dry brushed back in with gung-ho green to bring back some of that depth that the mega wash had smothered, and Meridius got the same treatment with the Zerius purple. Each cultist had this little dangly cloth bit hanging down the middle, some kind of decorative panel thing, or banner, or scarf, or drape of ominous intent. I have no idea. If you know what it's actually called, drop it in the comments and educate me. Either way, it needed a fresh base coat, so I used Wolf Grey on all three just to flatten it out and prep it for the next step. Then I hit the centre of it with Flesh Tearer's Red, avoiding the trim. For the trim, I went with gold because even weird robed fanatics deserve a bit of bling. Just a little nod to their posh cult status. Luxury evil. Here's a progress shot of how they're all looking now, and honestly, I still love them, except Maximus. He's still looking like an ugly snot rag who doesn't belong. Painted Maximus's knife in lead belcher because nothing says stabby cultist like a solid metallic blade. Everyone's leather belt got a base coat in scrag brown. I like to imagine it's the kind of rugged leather you only get from sacrificing a cursed goat under a blood moon. They're all wearing animal skulls as masks to hide their identities, like for all we know, this little psycho could be the local mayor. Those skulls got a base coat of wraith bone, which felt fitting. Any exposed skin was base coated in flayed one flesh. Why? Because it's flesh coloured, and the word flesh is literally in the name, so you can't argue with that kind of logic. Meridius got his beard painted in Rhinox hide. It's a glorious beard, by the way. I respect a cultist who takes time to condition. Now, before we carry on, I need to rave about this white paint. If you've ever struggled to find a good white for minis, try this one. It's super pigmented, it goes on crisp, and it doesn't have the texture of toothpaste. It's honestly a life changer in my opinion. It's the only white paint I use from now on. I used it to paint the pages in the book that Decimus is holding. I like to think that he's the group's resident librarian for all their unholy literature. I liked the wolf grey colour so much that I used it again, this time on the book cover, since it felt like the kind of colour a cursed tome would come in. Oh, and a quick flashback. When I painted the gold trim earlier, I forgot to mention that I also hit all the jewellery and ornaments in the same gold, including the antlers on Meridius' skull mask. Screamer Pink went on his tongue because even cult leaders deserve some bold lip colour. Whilst I had the Screamer Pink out, I used it to edge highlight parts of his robe too with a dry brush, because I wanted him to look absolutely fabulous. Time for an update shot. This is how they're looking right now. What do you think? Anything you'd do differently? And if you say repaint Maximus, I might cry. I wanted to protect my fragile little weirdos, so I hit them with a coat of matte varnish from Ammo, which is one of the best matte varnishes you can get from minis in my opinion. I use this because I'm clumsy and I tend to yeet the minis off my desk by accident when I'm painting them or holding them finicky ways. This helps keep the paint intact during any of those unplanned flying lessons. Once it dried, I used corn red to add a secondary colour to those banner scarf drape things. Then I edge highlighted it in Wild Rider Red, which is really more of a spicy orange colour, but hey, it works. And now it's time. Maximus's mighty makeover. I repainted this whole robe using the Fang as a base coat. Then I washed it with Nuln Oil to sink in the shadows, and then I dry brushed it in Wolf Grey over the edges. He looks so much better now. Redemption arc unlocked. What do you think though? Do you think he's better in blue, or were you a fan of his bin bag chic fate? After that, I mixed Seraphim Sepia, Lamium Medium, and Nuln Oil in equal parts to make a custom wash for all the belts, giving them a lovely aged leather look. I brought back some edge highlights on the belts with a scrag brown again, just to give them a bit of dimension. For the skin, I cheated and used Crusader skin from the Army Painter range because blending flesh tones is hard and I'm not above using a shortcut when it works. To finish off the book for now, I gave it a wash of Agrax Earthshade to make it look old, used, and very much like it contains forbidden knowledge and questionable life advice. Next, I slapped Skeleton Horde contrast paint over all the skull masks. It's the fastest and easiest way to make bones look like, well, bones. Instant undead vibes without any fuss. I dry brushed flayed one flesh over the skin to soften the Crusader skin wash from earlier, and it went really well. It blended it down into a nice realistic flesh tone. Next, I took Screaming Skull and edge highlighted those face masks to really make the bone details pop. It's like contouring, but for the dead. For the little jewels on their necklaces, I started with a clean coat of War Boss Green. Then I brightened them up with Moot Green, but kept away from the edges to create a little depth illusion. Fancy. Then came Waystone Green, a technical paint that's usually used over metallics to make shiny gems, but I slapped it straight on here like a gloopy wash and I let it do its own thing. Zero control, pure chaos, and it surprisingly worked. Whilst that goo was drying, I added some bronzy tones to Maximus's knife to make it look a little bit more ceremonial stabby. Then I popped a tiny white splodge onto all the gems for a shiny highlight, and I finished it with Tesseract Glow on top, just to give them that radioactive cult core energy. For Meridius's beard, I roughly stippled some XV88, I think that's what it's called, Games Workshop names are a fever dream, just to add some dusty highlights and a wisdom-aged flair. And finally I used Abaddon Black to scribble some questionable text into Decimus's book. Who knows what that secrets it holds? My guess is a recipe for summoning a pizza demon. And that's it folks, we are done. Here's a little montage of the finished trio. Enjoy the vibes, the close-ups and the questionable fashion choices. There's still a bit more I want to do, like splatter on some blood and add a little dirt and grime here and there, but I'll save that for when they're fixed into the full diorama. I've got that camping trip coming up first, so I'll probably dive into that project sometime after I return, hopefully around the end of May. I know I said at the start I'm not exactly a master painter, and I stand by that, but I'm genuinely happy with how they turned out. Hopefully you had fun tagging along with this slightly chaotic journey and you've learned a thing or two from my mistakes. For now, I'm off to celebrate with a well-earned cup of tea, so until next time, take care, paint stuff, and don't join any suspicious cults unless they offer snacks. Bye for now. Toodaloo! Psst. If you've made it this far, you're officially part of the inner circle. The secret handshake is just aggressively sipping tea and nodding at miniatures. Don't forget to like, sub, and summon the bell demon so you don't miss the diorama build, or my next camping misadventure where I attempt to fight midges with nothing but Yorkshire tea bags and poor life choices. See you soon. Hobbyshire out.